just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar, brought to you by the beautiful Grumpy Coffee. Grab your Grumpy Coffee to turn your frown upside down. We've got multiple blends at grumpycoffee.com.au, a beautiful, beautiful everyday blend, and also a darker blend, which is very grumpy. Give us a follow on Grumpy Drinks. We've also got DJ Grumpy. We make our very own music, so head to Grumpy Drinks. You can check it out. And also, do not forget, we have the Bloke Club. So join the Bloke Club. You automatically go in the draw to win a Mazda BT50. It's completely free to join, no strings attached at all. We give away prizes every single month, and that's all thanks to Luke Camilleri from Aspley Mazda. He is the one that has provided the Mazda BT50 to one lucky winner. Give him a follow on Instagram, LDC_01. And matter of fact, if you mention Bloke to him or anyone at Aspley Mazda, they'll give you a very special end of financial year price. With that all out of the way, we've got a very important person here, Darryl Brohman. How you going, Big Marn?
Yeah, well, that's what I said to you before, Denon. So I've been waiting for a little while to get on this great show. So it's great to be here, mate. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down. I really, really appreciate it. And, tell the people, what are you doing with yourself this day? Obviously, you've got your radio gig. What are you doing with yourself these days, mate?
That's about all I do. I'm pretty old now, so I don't do much. I do the radio with 2GB. I've been there for a fair while now. I'm trying to remember when I started there. I've been to a few different places. I started at 2KA, which was Penrith.
Yep.
Then I went to 2UE, I think, and then to 2GB, and I even had a stint at the ABC for a while.
No way.
So I've been to a number of stations, and I'm not sure why that is, probably because I got the arse at the others. But I've ended up back at GB, and we've had quite a successful period. So, mate, I won't be moving from GB. In fact, that'll be where I finish. And that's probably not that far away, I wouldn't think.
Has it been probably, do you feel more at home at 2GB? Do you think?
Well, I've been there longer than anywhere else, and I know all the guys pretty well there. They're always bringing in new people, like Paul Gallen's been there probably 3 or 4 years now. Lana Ferguson's been there about the same time.
Yep, okay.
So there's always different new people. MG's there now, Piggy Riddell, Mark Levy, Neil Breen's there.
What a team.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
We go good. Matt Thompson calls some games.
Yep.
Chris Warren. There's a number. Jamie Soward's there.
Oh,
so
Sowie,
there's a lot of different people doing various
good
things.
wide range of people too.
Yeah, well, I probably left someone out there. Josh Morris is there.
Oh, really?
He's done a great job as well. So, and if I've left you out, I'm really sorry. I forget who I'm working with half the time. So.
It's all about you when you're in there working.
Basically, yes, it is. Even when I'm out of there, it's all about me.
Mate, we were actually just speaking before. You would be getting close to calling 100 Origins. Getting close-ish.
Yeah, well, this has been a bit of a talking point when Ray Hadley was there. I mean, they made a big deal of him calling his 100th, I think, in Melbourne last year, second game in Origin last year.
Yeah.
And I, at the time, hadn't given it a great deal of thought because, I don't like to blow my own trumpet like Hadley does. He likes to blow his own trumpet. So I just out of the blue, I said, actually, I think this is my 101, 101st. and you know what? And I just plucked that out just to give him the shits. But when I think about it, I probably have done close to that because I've been around a long time. I started in the media in 1991, the year Penrith won their comp. I was with 2KA out at Penrith, and we called all the Penrith games. And I think we did Origin in those days. Well, I can't remember, but I think we did. So, mate, that's I've had a job in the media every year since in various different places. So that's 34, 35 years. So
be close.
I probably have done.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Something games.
100 Origin games. Wow.
I wish I'd played that many.
Mate, speaking of Origin, what are your thoughts on this year's Origin? It's been a little bit tame. Like there's been controversies outside maybe selections, but in regards to words being said between camps, a little bit quiet this year.
I think it's been a bit tame as well. I don't know. I see an article in the paper today saying you can't dislike the Queenslanders, and well, I'm a Queenslander and I love them. Well, they've already opened up with the Reece Walsh punch. I mean, fair dinkum. Storm in a teacup. I mean, who cares, honestly? In saying that, I mean, I'm now, mate, the social media stuff, and I'm a bit old for social media. I do have a couple of accounts, but I do hardly anything on it. I really dislike it, and I don't know why they would post things like that. It's just looking for trouble.
Yep.
And we see Terrell May got himself into a bit of trouble. Reece Walsh. I mean, how many of them? They all just keep doing it. So, mate, but it's a storm in a teacup, seriously.
I was actually saying on the podcast we were speaking about earlier, like imagine blokes from your generation, what they were doing when they were 22 years old.
Well, mate, I mean, it is a different era. And we all know it's a different era.
Yeah.
In those days, we would, I only played 2 State of Origins, but you'd get together and we'd get on the drink first, probably 4 days before we were playing, and have a real bender just to get you. They'd often pick the sides on a Sunday night or something. You'd play on Wednesday.
Yeah, wow.
So it was a bit different. Well, very different. But most of us had jobs. Not all of us had jobs, but most of us had jobs. So it's a different era, mate. But there's still the passion's still there. I mean, in my day, it was. One thing I always wanted to do was play for Queensland, and I imagine you're the same. And I was lucky enough to do that. So, I ticked a box there, but obviously the results. We won one and lost one, so I only had the 2 games. But mate, it's one of the highlights of my life. I won a comp with the Bulldogs. That is the highlight of my career.
Yeah.
But playing State of Origin's a close number 2.
Yeah, wow. It's we've just been so fortunate that we stuck it out. We a lot of blokes made sacrifices, and women in part of the game as well, but a lot of blokes made sacrifices early on in rugby leagues, I guess. I wouldn't say birth because it's been around for quite a while now, but you look at the AFL and how much would they give to go back to a time where they could have kind of forced their players into an Origin arena?
Yeah. Well, mate, I don't know why the AFL State of Origin didn't succeed. I would probably think the passion. I think there is a genuine dislike amongst Queensland and New South Wales people, and that probably emanates from State of Origin. Whether there's that same dislike between, Victorians, New South Wales, South Australian, WA people, Queenslanders, they play it now, obviously. I don't know, but I think the fact that, you've got Queensland, New South Wales people. See, in my day when I was growing up, we had just Queensland sides playing New South Wales sides, and quite often the New South Wales side would have 3 or 4 former Queenslanders in it. Arthur Beetson's a prime example. I think John Rebo played for New South Wales. There's a number of them who left Queensland to go to New South Wales, primarily to make it in the big league, but also for the money. And then they played that well that they got selected in New South Wales sides. They'd go up and play Queensland, beat them by 30 or 40, and the Queenslanders, I know it upset them.
Yeah.
And then eventually, the idea came up about State of Origin and Arthur Beetson playing the first game, and mate, it was manic up there. I mean, you wouldn't have been around in those days, but I was.
Yeah.
And mate, I was a young bloke just watching it, and I thought, how good's this? Because Wally played in the first one. I think Gino did. Mel. There's a lot of blokes who are just legends of the game, but the number one bloke was Arthur Beetson.
Yeah.
And I loved Arthur. He was my idol.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to play a game under him. He coached me in the 83 State of Origin series. I only played the one game, but he coached me, and I got to know him, and mate, just further endorsed how much I did love him. He was a great man.
Yeah. I mean, the history and I think that like a lot of maybe New South Welshmen don't understand that not a lot of them, but there are some that don't understand. That's a big reason why Queensland have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, I think so.
Because of that initial, what you just described.
I don't know what you think, and I don't expect you to say, but I think as Queenslanders, and that might be diminishing now what we think, I think that the New South Welshmen feel as though they're superior breed to us.
Oh, I agree.
I
totally agree. I 100% agree.
That's the way I feel.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's not the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the Queensland people, particularly in the early days, maybe not so much now, given the fact they all play in the one competition, I think they now maybe don't feel that as strongly as what we did in our day. But I know in my day we did. We felt as though we were the cousins who were sort of country hicks, and I don't know if that's still the case, but I know in my day it was, and we did feel as though we were the people who were just downtrodden a little bit and looked down upon.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I grew up playing soccer.
Yep.
And even as a Queenslander in soccer, playing for Queensland, we felt the same way. Like, these guys think they're better than us. They got more resources. You know, all their gear's a little bit better. All the like little finer details that you see, and you just look across. They're looking down on us, kind of thing. That's the way we felt. And that's not even in rugby league.
I think, like in those days too. Like when I was playing in Brisbane and looking, I used to watch the Sydney comp obviously pretty closely because I was footballer and I loved it. But I used to look at them and think, these blokes are gods. You know, they really were. Like I started in Brisbane in 1974, I think, playing first grade, and you'd see the match of the day on the ABC or whatever it was, and I think, geez, how good are these blokes? Yeah. And then when I got the opportunity to come down, I know I was probably a bit reluctant. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be good enough to play against these blokes, and I went to Penrith, and we had a pretty crappy side, but it didn't take me long to work out that they were the same as us. Yeah. The only difference being in New South Wales, they had more of them. You know, in each first grade side, like in Brisbane, you might have, I don't know, say 7 or 8 blokes who could play first grade in New South Wales in those days. But down here, they had 15 or 20 first graders. So they just the numbers were the difference. But the good players in Queensland, the really good players, would always make it in New South Wales. Yeah, always.
And you said heading down to New South Wales, because like that's especially, I think we don't give enough credit to, in your day growing up, like there wasn't immediacy of like calling your family. You'd probably have to go to like one phone at home or something like that.
Well, there's no mobiles. It was different.
Yeah, so when you're moving away, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah. I'd played for Norths in Brisbane, and I started very young. I actually played when I was still at school. I was at high school, and I got picked in first grade. And I sort of thought, Jesus, this is, I was excited, but I didn't really know what I'd got myself into. Yeah. Mate, like I used to like shower in my undies because I got a small one. And that was an issue for me. I mean, that was an issue. Like, I'm a 17-year-old boy showering with all these blokes, and they say, why are you showering in your undies? I said, I just like it. But they eventually found out. That's another reason I didn't change clubs too much. But they were like grown men, and I'm like a kid at school playing with all these blokes. Some of them 30. I actually played my first grade game in Brisbane for Norths. I played with Tommy Bishop, who you're probably well aware of. Yep. And against John Sattler, who I'm sure you're well aware
absolutely,
of.
Yeah,
Those two blokes had left Sydney in 73 to come up to Brisbane. I think Rod McAuliffe had probably bought them and, given them a fair dollar to come up and just play in the club footy up there. And in the end, I don't know if Sattler ever played for Queensland or not. I'm not sure. He might have. But they went to their respective clubs. Sats went to Wests and Tommy came to Norths, which was my club.
Bash Up Park. Yeah.
But it was actually named after Albert Bishop, not Tommy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
After Tommy.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mate, you've had a shocker.
No,
Tommy was good, but he wasn't that good.
Okay, apologies.
And mate, as I said, my first training night, I got lapped by the slowest bloke there, a bloke called Ron Clothier, who was another New South Welshman who'd gone to Queensland. He was a front row for Norths. And, mate, my first game, they gave me the goal kicking, because I was all right goal kicker, but, mate, I just played shocking. I thought I was fit enough, but I was way below what I needed to be.
Yeah, okay.
And I just had the worst game of my life. And I remember going home to mum and dad's after it, and I thought, well, that's the end of my career. I'm gone. I had an absolute shocker. Yeah. And out of the blue, well, not out of the blue, next Tuesday night, I got picked again in first grade, and I thought, oh, shit. I don't know if I want to play, and I was really down. Yeah. Anyway, I played all right the next game at Bash Up Park.
Yeah, okay.
We played brothers, and I played all right, and I think we won. And then I sort of bit by bit felt more comfortable. Yep. And got to know the players, like blokes like Steve Calder, who I loved. And I actually got a call today from back row called Tony Trent. You would never heard of these blokes. Yeah. But he was a gun back rower as well. So there was him, Steve Calder, myself, Tommy. We had. Norths had a very, very good side. We ended up going on a bit of a winning streak that year, and we're minor premiers.
Wow.
And we missed the grand final. We got beaten in straight sets. Oh. Which is really disappointing. Yep. But that's life. I loved playing for Norths in Brisbane, but I ended up coming to Sydney when I realised there's a, you wouldn't remember this bloke, but there's a bloke by the name of Jeff Naylor, who I played all my junior football against in Brisbane. He played for East in Brisbane, and he's my age, and he came down to Sydney and played for Balmain. And I'd watched him from Brisbane. Like he came down in, I came in 79, he came in I think 77, and I watched him play, and he handled it pretty well. And I thought, you know what, I've always thought I was a better player than him. I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And as luck would have it, I played with Nick Geiger, who was a current Australian hooker. Penrith signed him. I said to Nick, can you put a good word in for me? Because I dislocated my shoulder and missed all of 78.
Yep.
And he did, and they went out and they offered me a deal, which I was happy with. So that's the reason I went to Penrith.
No way.
Yeah.
Far out. Just back with Norse.
Yes.
Is it Wynnum that is the
Wynnum Manly? Well, Wynnum had
arch rival, is it?
Not in those days. Probably
Okay.
Valleys were in those days.
Okay.
But Wynnum Manly was the club. Like after I'd left, where I think Gene Miles,
Yeah. Okay.
Wally
played for him, yep.
played for Valleys originally. Then
Yep.
he went to Wynnum.
Yep.
But Gino was there. Wally was there. I think Colin Scott was there. There's a lot of the State of Origin boys. Maybe Greg Dowling. I'm not sure
Yep.
if Dowling went to Wynnum as well. He might have. They were a very strong side, mate. They were Sydney quality side back in probably early 80s.
What are your thoughts on, because the NRL becomes a big thing, and although the New South Wales Cup and Queensland Cup are still around, and they're still good solid footy, but it's nowhere near, even when I was coming through, like the standard of rugby league, and I'm sure that the generation before me, which would be in the early 90s to 2000, I came through early 2000s, like 2006, 2005. I'm sure the one before me would say, mate, it was even better back then. And then you go back, obviously, to your era, it was like a bloody strong comp. How do you reckon, because like they're separate entities, the NRL and QRL, like how do you reckon they all work together to get that passion back into the Queensland Cup and New South Wales Cup?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because obviously if they're any good, they get the eyes picked out of them. The good, anyone who's looks like they can play Sydney standard football is usually grabbed and given a contract or something like that. That's why you have blokes going out looking at all those games, from just about every club in the competition, and they try and find a gem from somewhere. Yeah, and a few of them have sort of done that. I mean, Cameron Munster, I remember watching him playing in the Brisbane comp, and I thought he's not a bad player, this bloke, but he was better than not a bad player. He's superstar.
Pretty bloody good.
Yeah. And there's been others who have obviously played in the Brisbane comp who have made their way down. Who may have fallen through the net of the Broncos. Harry Grant, I think, might have been one. You'd think a lot of those Queensland boys, the Broncos would have swooped upon them, but they clearly didn't. And some did slip through the net. Yeah. And you can't get them all, but, Cameron Smith.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot of those superstars never played for the Broncos. Yeah, and they were Brisbane boys. So, that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? Rugby league. I mean, you're always trying to get one over someone else. And you're always trying to get a player who you think can play a bit for the right money, and then sometimes they slip through the net. But the Melbourne Storm obviously did a pretty good job of recruitment. Greg Inglis,
Well, it's funny you say that because Paul Bunn, up until 2000, and you probably already know this, up until about 2007-8, was the Broncos recruitment manager. Yeah. Went down to Storm, and ever since then...
Well, no, the Melbourne Storm do it better than just about, they do any club.
Yeah,
agreed. They clearly do because they keep producing blokes who have either had a crack at other clubs and didn't make it or are just looking for a chance. Like you look at Max King. Like
he was down at the Storm.
The Storm. Yeah. He's gone from I think he went from the Titans to the Storm. Did he go to the Bulldogs after that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he went to the Bulldogs
and
after
the Bulldogs gave him a chance, and now he's playing State of Origin.
Yep.
It's great.
Crazy. And so, to your further point, what's so interesting about the Melbourne Storm is they clearly identified something in him. It didn't work out because he got injured, and I think COVID threw things about, because I've actually had him on the podcast. But it just shows you how good their identification system is that even ones that come and injuries make it not work, they go away and he ends up making Origin for another side. So it just shows there was something in him that they'd identified. It just didn't seem to work.
Well, they do it better than most, mate. I mean, there's people who have gone there, and I forget, but people who have played at clubs in Sydney, were unwanted, go to Melbourne, end up playing in grand finals and win grand finals. It's something they would never have even contemplated. And then they got an opportunity, probably, and they probably didn't go there for the money.
No.
I think would say that's a fair thing to say. They've probably gone there just for an opportunity and to prove themselves. And I mean, again, I won't name them because I can't remember most.
Well, here's a good one, Jerome Hughes. So he was at the Cowboys, got brushed. Titans got brushed. Yeah. Won a Dally M with the Storm.
He's a superstar, mate. He's a great player, and I think he was a fullback in those
days. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, he's gone into halfback, But you go through it all. Matty Geyer. Yeah. I don't know where Matty played. He must have played at Penrith, I suppose, in the early days. But he went to Melbourne, won. I don't know how many comps he won, but played for. I think he played for Australia. I know he certainly played for New South Wales.
Yeah.
But mate, there's others. I just can't remember the names.
Mate, they've done it so many times. Many times. Mate, so you go down to Penrith.
Yes.
And you would have been probably, 20 years old
I
at
was
stage?
20. I went down in 70, at the end of 70. I was 22.
22 years old.
Yep.
And was it, as you said earlier, like the best Queensland players definitely could play down there. But then when you go to training and everyone's that good, did you feel the immediate lift in standard when you were as soon as you got there, or did it take a while?
Not really.
Okay.
We weren't that good a side.
Okay.
So the standard wasn't probably as big as you might have thought.
Yeah, okay.
We were running towards the tail of the field most seasons.
Yep.
We had Len Stacker as our coach, and I love Len Stacker. He coached us when I was there in 79. I don't know when he coached us till, might have been 80, might have been 81. Then Peardy came in and Johnny Peardy coached us as well. So, but we didn't have a great side in those days. Look what they're doing now. It's remarkable, even though they're not having a great year this year. But the place is a great place. I thoroughly enjoyed every moment I had there. I had 5 years there. Then I ended up leaving because they didn't offer me a contract. I thought it was a good enough reason to leave. So I ended up going to the Bulldogs. That was after I was playing for Penrith in '83 when I broke my jaw. So I missed the whole season.
Yep.
At the end of the year, they decided not to give out contracts. They were giving out, play for performance. And I thought, Jesus, that doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
Because I kept getting injured, so I needed to find somewhere where I could go where I could get a sign-on fee.
Yeah, okay.
And I had an offer from both Parramatta and Canterbury. And I was living at Penrith, and to be honest with you, Parramatta just won the 3 comps, 81, 2 and 3.
Yep.
And I wanted to play for Parramatta. I wanted to play with Sterling, Kenny, Groth, Ella, Cronin. Mate, I wanted to play there, plus it was closer to home for me. But the Bulldogs offered me more money. But it wasn't just the money. The Bulldogs had bought Warren Ryan to coach. He had a big rap on him at that stage. They'd bought Terry Lamb, Peter Tunks, Peter Kelly. Had a number of blokes coming through like Lagmac, Gillespie.
Yep.
Steve Mortimer was there. His brothers were there. Great players, the 3 of them. And then I thought about it because in the early 80s when Parramatta were winning all those comps, there were 3 gun sides. There was Canterbury, Manly, and Parra. Okay. And Parra the best.
Yeah. Okay.
So I weighed up. I could have gone to Parra, and I don't regret going there, but it would have been nice to have had a run with those guys.
With Kenny and Sterling and that.
Mate, what a side. But in the end, I decided to go to Canterbury, and maybe we won 2 comps. I actually hurt myself. I dislocated my shoulder first trial at Canterbury. So I was coming off a broken jaw. First game after a broken jaw, dislocated my shoulder and had an operation. Man. So I moved. I went to Canterbury, and I didn't play for about the first 10 weeks in the competition. I went through and were beating everybody.
Yeah.
And I thought, Jesus,
am I going to get started?
My shoulder wasn't right either.
Yeah, okay.
I came back, but I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, I came back in the Reggies. I was going pretty average, to be really honest with you, in the Reggies. Even though we had a good Reggies side, we were playing like bastards. And then I'll never forget this day. We were playing at Belmore, and we were playing Cronulla. Now, our coach was Warren Ryan, and Cronulla's coach was Jack Gibson in 1984.
Jeez.
So, and we were leading the comp. And what used to happen in those days, which you probably didn't go through, was after you played reserve grade, you'd
sit on the bench for first
grade.
grade.
Not everyone, but probably about 8 would.
Yeah, wow.
They pick 80 and say, you sit on the bench for first grade. Anyway, I sat on the bench for first grade. I was playing crap. we'd lost reserve grade that day. I sat on the bench for first grade. I'm sorry, I said. And anyway, at halftime of the game in first grade, after Bulldogs leading the comp, they were getting beaten like 22-0 by Cronulla. And Warren Ryan, who's a great coach,
Yep.
he took it personal with his – he thought he was the super coach, and he pretty much was, and he hated the fact that Jack Gibson was classified as a super coach ahead of Warren Ryan. Because Warren Ryan just sort of got involved in – like he coached, I think, Newtown to a grand final, 81 it might have been. And then he's got to Bulldogs and he had some cattle to work with, and he wanted to be seen as one of the great coaches. Anyway, he had the shits. He had the shits real bad with them because they were losing. So they, at half time, he picked out 4 blokes and took them off and put 4 blokes off the bench on.
No way.
Just because he had the shits.
Yeah, wow. Sent a message kind of thing.
Yeah. I happened to be one of the 4 he put on. Anyway, we went out. We lost, but I think we won the second half. And mate, from that day on, the next weekend, he picked me in first grade. And I don't think we lost a game.
Far out.
I think we won. I think we won every game, but I might.
What about
be
that
wrong.
sliding doors moment? You know,
Yeah.
just
Mate, you know what? It was.
Yeah.
If I was in, and I wasn't playing great.
yeah,
But as soon as I got into first grade, with better players,
yeah, okay,
I started to play better.
yeah, right.
And he had me doing a bit of ball playing, which is what I wanted to do. I was on the fringe doing a bit of stuff, and anyway, it worked out all right. Even though my shoulder wasn't 100% right, I just it was a great opportunity, and I somehow bluffed my way through it, you know, and stayed there. And I got, to be honest, I got a bit cranky. We'd won all those games in a row and got to the semi-finals, and he decided to put me on the bench because he didn't want me to be involved in the tough stuff early, you know. So
okay, so
just probably a reasonable enough reason. Yeah, we put Brian Batiste on. Brian Batiste opened the semi-final against, I think it was Parramatta. Might have been St George or Parramatta, I can't remember.
Yep.
Anyway, and Brian Batiste started the game, and then I came on later. And, you know, I didn't like it.
Yeah, okay.
And I played okay
Yeah.
without being great. But anyway, I'd actually played really well leading into the semis, and then he did the same in the grand final, and as luck would have it, same thing happened. It was 0-0 when I came on about 5 minutes before half-time.
Yep.
I think I let a try in before half-time. They missed the kick. It was 4-0. Anyway, you know, in all modesty, I was delighted how I played second half.
Yeah, just ripped in.
I played good.
It's almost like woke you up that
good.
try, yeah.
Well, we only won 6-4.
Yeah, wow.
You know, but I felt as though I'd created enough opportunities for our blokes. And, mate, I'm loath to wrap myself, but I do watch the video probably once every 6 months.
Mate, that's
Only at the second half. I don't look at the first half.
If I was winning a grand final, mate, it'd be once a week.
Well,
it'd be once a week.
It was the greatest moment of my football life.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
You know, to win a grand final is just tremendous, and to do it at the Dogs, where they're you know, you just see what the supporters are doing these days. You know, they're going ape shit. You know, aren't they?
Oh, mate, they're the
and
best.
That's exactly what they were like in '84. Exactly
wow.
the same. Like they filled the streets after we won the grand final. You had to get into the Leeds club. You had to be carried over the head and shoulder. Like they were hands up.
No way.
Passing you through like that to get in the club. So, mate, you felt like you were special, and you know it was lovely. It was
mate, it's just I really, as I said, the sliding doors moment, because I think the difference, like some people will be watching footy now and they go, oh, you know, you did your shoulder. Of course, you just get into rehab. It's fine. I think people don't realise, like a lot of people were working back then as well.
Yeah.
But also, it wasn't as simple as like there wasn't as much science. There wasn't as anywhere near the same rehab. And so, like, let's say for some bizarre reason you just weren't one of the 4 picked to replace those guys. Who knows? You could have played the rest of the season in resis and then said, you know what, I want to go home or something. Maybe I don't know. You know,
that's absolutely true. I'd come back early because I wanted to play.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew my shoulder wasn't right.
Yeah.
And, mate, it's still not right today.
Yeah.
You know, I still feel really weak with it. I had 2 shoulder operations. I probably dislocated it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, wow.
And it's just not right. So, but, you know, that I was lucky enough to be able to, you know, as I said, bluff my way through it in that year, in '84. And as I said, I played good because it wasn't hard to play good. I was doing a bit of ball playing on the edges. I had, Steve Mortimer, Terry Lamb, you know, the Mortimer brothers, Andrew Farrer,
yeah, wow,
Mick Potter.
What was it like playing
Sobby,
with Terry Lamb?
Terry Lamb champion, mate. And I love Terry Lamb.
Yeah.
He's just a champion bloke. He's just old school.
Yeah.
He's got big now, as in he's just like a little tank. He's short, but he's wide.
Yeah.
But he's just mate, what a player he was.
He's a goer.
Mate, him and Steve Mortimer together were just sensational.
Yeah.
Sensational. They had to be good too because they were up against Sterling and Kenny. Different, players, the whole four of them, but they competed on every play, particularly, Steve and Terry. I mean, brilliant. I actually went and saw Steve about 8 weeks ago. He's not going all that well. He's got a bit of dementia, so it's hard to see a bloke like him.
Well, a warrior, really,
mate, his record is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he probably didn't play as much football for Australia because of probably Sterlo. They're in the same era, unfortunately, but he was a great player. And him and Terry complemented themselves. Well, Terry didn't play a lot for Australia either because of Kenny probably.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and Wally, he was in an era where you had some real superstars.
I mean, it shows you how good he was to be remembered as strongly as he is.
Oh, Terry's a brilliant player, mate.
Yeah.
And Terry won, I think he won 3 or 4 comps. He certainly won 2 when I was there.
Yep.
He might not have played in one. He might have been injured. I think Mick Hagan might have replaced him in one of the years. Might have been, I don't know which year it was. But anyway, he won so many comps. Just a champion, as was Turvey, But mate, they all were. I loved them all. They're all good blokes. I don't see enough of them. I'd love to go and catch up, but unfortunately, they have their reunions. I think normally might be the Saturday before the grand final. I'm usually working, so I can't go.
Can't go to them.
But when I see Cement, Tunksy's just mad. They're all mad. Kelly, mate, Peter Kelly's one of the great front rowers, and I think and I say this all the time, he's the best front rower never to play for Australia.
Yeah, okay.
In my opinion, he was just tough, skillful.
Yep.
Great player to play with.
Yeah, wow. So in that grand final, you're up 6-4, so it's not like you could lap in the last 10 minutes and go, we won it. When that buzzer does go.
Oh, relief.
Yeah.
We put a lot of effort in, and we were minor premiers. We'd come off, I think, in those days, I think it was final 4 or 5, I can't remember, but, we were minor premiers. I think we had a week off. Might have been final 5. I think we had a week off. Then one of the four that were left got knocked out. Then we played, I think, Parramatta in the major semi, beat them, had another week off into a grand final. So we'd only really played one game in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a bit of I think it was in everyone's mind that we might get tired, and we did. But we had managed to hold on. Mick Cronin had a kick to equal the game.
Yep.
Probably 4 or 5 minutes from the end. And it was a very kickable kick, particularly by his standards. And I'll never forget it. I wasn't that sort of bloke to talk to the opposition much, but I remember sledging him with the kick. I was only about 10 metres away. He's probably 20 metres from goal, and he missed it.
No way.
I don't feel great about it, but if it won us a comp, I'm okay.
It's worth it. It's worth it. And so you'd already before that grand final, you'd already played for Queensland? You'd made your debut?
I played for Queensland 3 times, actually. I played for Queensland once prior to Origin in a game against Great Britain, which I got selected in. I was, proud as punch. It was before I came to Sydney. That would have been on 78, I think. But believe it or not, I dislocated my shoulder in that game. So
no way.
That might have been the first time I ever dislocated my shoulder. So that put me out for a while. So, mate, I had a shocking run with injuries. As I said, I dislocated my shoulder 4 or 5 times, broke my arm 3 or 4 times, had the broken jaw. I mean, I just couldn't get away from the injuries, and it did affect me in the end. I should have been a better player. If I got fitter, I would have been a way better player.
Yeah.
And I don't blame anyone, for any of this stuff. I mean, to be honest, it was my own fault. But I felt as though, in my mind, I felt my ability was good enough to get me through without needing the fitness side of things. But I mean, as we all know, in this day and age, you can't hide from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I was more focused on my fitness in the earlier days, I would have been a better player.
Yeah, okay. And so that first Origin, so 83, you'd already played for Queensland against Great Britain, but then you got 83. Obviously, you broke your jaw.
Yep.
Like walk us through that moment. It's a moment that's gone down in history.
Yeah, it has a bit. Look, it reared its ugly head last year when I had a bit to say about Les Boyd getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. You know, I won't go into that again, but you know my feelings on that.
Yep.
Mate, I thought my time had come and been and come. I didn't think I'd play rep football, and mate, State of Origin in those days, like it started in 1980, I think. So there's one game in 80, one in 81, one in 82. I think that's right. And I was picked in 84, I think. Anyway, cut a long story short.
It's a long time.
It was 83.
Yeah, 83.
It was only the 5th ever, I think, State of Origin game, or might have only been the 4th ever. I don't know. And, mate, I was proud as punch. I had my parents and family there. Like, I was living in Sydney, and we played it at Lang Park in those days. In 83, I was thinking, and they were picking an Australian side after the game, and I thought, you know, and I got a call from Arthur Beetson, you know, to tell me I was in the side. I'd never expected to be there. And there was about 5 of us from Sydney that went up there. But there's a lot of Queensland-based boys there, Mel, Gino, Wally, you know, all those sort of blokes. Mark Murray, I think, was there. Colin Scott, decent side, but to be honest, I didn't know many of them. I knew of them, but I didn't know them.
Yeah,
you know, and there was, I think, Rebo, myself. I'm trying to think who came up from Sydney. Anyway, there's a few of us. Brad Tessman might have been down there then. I'm not sure, but it was a whole different ball game for me. It's one thing I'd always wanted to do was play for Queensland in Australia. Yeah, but I had my chance in 83, and it was just so different. In those days, they dropped us, the bus, our Queensland bus would go from the hotel down Caxton Street, and seriously, it was just
chockers.
Mental. Yeah. We drove down Caxton Street. They've closed it off now, but we did back then. Wow. And they were rocking the bus, and once they realised it was the Queensland players, it was phenomenal. But if the New South Wales boys went down, and I think they did, they were throwing cans and the whole thing at them, you know. So it would have been a bit horrific for them. Yeah. But we were probably underdogs, you know. Yep. They had a lot of good players, New South Wales, and we had, I think, 5 from New South Wales, but the rest from Brisbane or Queensland. And started the game. I thought I'd started well, and then I broke my jaw. So that was after about 10 minutes. Yeah, okay. You know. And it's just the disappointment because you don't really get an opportunity. Disappointment, yeah. Because they picked Australian side that night. Yeah. Ray Brown. Was it Ray Brown, front row for Manly? I'm trying to remember. Ray Brown was a hooker, I know. Dave Brown. Yeah. Dave Brown, who wasn't even in the side the day before, the Queensland side the day before the game, Paul McCabe got sick and they brought Dave up to sit on the bench to replace Paul. Well, as luck would have it, I broke my jaw. Dave came out and replaced me, and he got picked in the Australian side that night. Oh, wow. You know, so that's, from my perspective, I hold nothing against Dave Brown, but it's just disappointing. Yeah. And I never played for Australia, and as I said, I think I was good enough too, but through my lack of fitness, I think would probably held me back. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But for me, that was the night. If I was going to play for Australia,
it's going to be then.
It was going to be then because Queensland won that game. Yeah. Started well. Wally killed him. Yeah. You know, Fatty played.
Oh, the great Fatty.
We had, and that's where I first met Fatty. Yeah. In that State of Origin game in 83.
Far out. What another almost, it's a negative sliding doors moment, you know?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, mate, it was a negative. It hurt. Not physically, of course, it did hurt physically, but it, you know what? This is absolutely true. I say it all the time, Dan. And when it happened, I thought, shit, I think I've broken my jaw. I didn't know, but I knew it hurt. It hurt, and it was, you know, a bit loose. And I thought, I was sitting on the ground thinking about it. I said, you know what? This is State of Origin. I could become a legend here because having played with Sattler prior to it, I knew the Sattler story when he played for Souths. Yeah. When he broke his jaw. Yeah. And he played the whole game. And, mate, that's just legendary stuff. Oh, mate, the photos. And you know what? It did go through my head. Yeah. And I thought, I might be able to play on here and, you know, do a John Sattler. And anyway, I did get up and I did play on for probably a couple of 3 or 4 minutes. And in the end, I just couldn't do it. Yeah. I said to Wally, I've got to go off.
Yeah, just too
much.
And
I went off. And mate, it's it's not a funny story, but people they wouldn't know this, but I went back into the sheds, obviously disappointed. Like, it was only 10, 15 minutes into the game, and I was going to have a shower. My dad came down, he was fuming. Anyway, Les Boyd got sin binned about 10 minutes after I went off, and he actually came in and apologised to me in the Queensland shed.
Wow.
I think there was only me, Dad, and him, and Dad told him to rack off.
Oh, wow.
You know, so that's probably something people don't know. So,
wow.
You know.
And so was it just one of those things that, obviously you sued him after it, and then you settled out of court. To pursue that, was it?
That was tough.
Walk us through your thoughts.
I think Charlie Gibson put me on it, who was the CEO of Penrith at the time, and he said, "Man, you should sue this bloke." I said, because I don't know if that had happened in rugby league before. It may have, may not have. He said, but, he's cost you a fair bit. And it did cost me a fair bit, not only financially, but also, on the field as well as off.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and mate, I'm still not proud to this day that I did sue him. And that obviously created a bit more friction amongst him and I. Yeah. I never see him, mate, so I wouldn't go out of my way to see him, and he wouldn't go out of his way to see me, and I can completely understand why he doesn't like me. But I'd like to think people out there can understand why I don't like him either.
Yeah.
I think he took away some of my opportunity, and it was a foul act, and it's not to be tolerated. And to be honest, that was the beginning of when they really did come down hard on some of the on-field incidents that happened. I think he got 9 months for that, for breaking my jaw. But it took me a while to think about whether I should be suing him or not. But I think Jack Gibson rang Charlie and said, he sort of said, I think you should sue this bloke. And he passed it on to me, and I thought, well, if Jack Gibson thinks I should, maybe I should.
Yeah.
Because it did cost me, I don't know, might have been 10,000 in those days, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it cost me a bit of money and stuff. So I did sue him, and as I said, I don't know if I'm certainly not proud of doing it, but I'll stand my ground if people want to debate me as to whether it was a right or wrong thing to do.
Yeah. And was it more because, look, you get injured on a footy field. Was it more the intent that made it different, do you feel?
I think it was the intent. I mean, and the denial of one of my dreams.
Yeah, okay.
I think a bit of everything. Mate, look, and I don't want to continue to go on Les Boyd stuff, mate. It's 1983 it happened.
So long ago.
Forever ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, mate, I was running the ball up. He cocked his elbow and elbowed me in the face.
Yeah.
That's not playing football. And that's never has been.
Yeah.
They might want to say, oh, well, it was a rough and tough time. Well, yeah, it was a rough and tough time, but that is completely out of the norm. Yeah. Elbowing blokes while they're running the ball up.
Yeah.
So I'll stand my ground on that every time, and I'll argue with anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I get so many people saying, "Oh, you weak bastard," for suing him and stuff. I say, well, maybe I am.
Yeah, well, they haven't been in your shoes, though. They don't
exactly.
know. Yeah.
You walk in my shoes and see how you feel.
But the good thing is you did fight your way back into Origin, mate.
I did.
So it's like, I know you say I could have been fitter, and don't get me wrong, I totally believe you that maybe you would have had a better career, but you still did bloody well, mate. You got back into the Origin side.
Well, I did, and it was 1986. Obviously, after the 83 one, I thought, well, my time's gone. But Wayne Bennett was coaching Queensland then, and out of the blue, he rang me because I was playing for Penrith at the time. I'd gone back to Penrith. I had 5 years at Penrith, I think. Then I had 2 at Canterbury. Then 86, I went back to Penrith. I was still living at Penrith. I lived at Penrith all the time, and Tim Sheens was coaching him, and he just said, "Look, you interested in coming back?" Because they'd unearthed a couple of decent young players, like Greg Alexander, probably at the top of the list. He was just a star, Greg Alexander. Way. And we still had blokes like Fittler, and not Freddie was coming through later. Sorry, Brad Izzard, who was a very good player. Royce was there. A lot of my old mates who I'd played with in the early days were still there. So I thought, what, I'm living here. The Bulldogs were lukewarm. I thought, I'll go back to Penrith.
Yeah,
because they're a side on the up. I think they'd made the semis in 85. And I went back there, and Tim Sheen said to me, he said, "Look, there's a few things you're going to have to do here to play first grade." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Well, you won't play first grade until you get to 95 kilos.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I was probably 110. And I probably played at about 103 or 4.
Yeah.
And I said, well, all right. So I went back. I went on a diet.
What was a diet like back in those days? Because there was not as much nutrition information back then.
There wasn't much nutrition in it. I just
stopped eating.
I was basically, that was it. Don't eat the crap and don't eat.
Yeah.
So I went on a diet. I was drinking Sustagen.
Sustagen, no way.
I don't know if Sustagen's still around, but I was drinking Sustagen.
So that was the old protein powder stuff.
Well, basically, yes.
Yeah.
So I drink that, water. Tim Sheen's, he'd say, "Man, drink, if you're hungry, drink water." And I used to do that. But I was always hungry. And when I'd break free, I'd have often, well, not often, but I'd try not to do it. I'd buy KFC gravy in the cups like this. I don't know if they still sell it like that. So KFC, that was my cheat.
That was your cheat meal?
Yeah. But I'd be eating like salads and steak and salads. And I still had steak and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is
But I ended up, believe it or not, I did get down to 95 kilos.
Wow.
And as much as it improved my mobility, but I lost my strength.
Absolutely,
and I just felt as though I was playing front row at 95. I just felt as though I was giving up a bit.
Bit of weak in contact, kind of losing that contact.
Yeah, and it did get me back into the Origin side through Bennett, because he said we need a front rower and I'm going to give you a go. And I said, oh, okay. So I played that game. I played the whole 80 minutes, but mate, I did I made 45 tackles or something.
Yeah,
mate.
wow.
In a game of football, if I made 15 tackles, that was a record for me.
Yeah, wow.
But I got to a stage where I felt as though I turned into a tackling machine as opposed to what I believe my strength was, which was a bit of ball playing and stuff like that. So I was taking rucks up, like taking first hit ups after kicks for touch.
Yep.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
But I do, it did help me get back into first grade and play another Origin game. So, and then I had a bit of a falling out with Sheens in 87. I played mainly reserve grade in 87. He brought in a time trial. You had to run 2.5 Ks in, I think it was 10 minutes for the forwards or 9.5 minutes for the backs. So I couldn't do it.
10.5, so that's what it's about, yeah.
Two
for
and
a
a
big
half
fella,
K, 10 minutes.
That's pretty quick for a big fella.
Mate, as I said to him, I said, mate, if I was running in the Olympics in 1930, I would have won a gold medal over 2.5 Ks. Seriously. So I'd do it you do it on the Tuesday night. If you couldn't do it then, I'd have to come back on the Wednesday night and do it again.
Yep.
Because we'd only train. In those days, you train Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning. And then if you couldn't do it Wednesday, I'd do it Thursday night. Mate, seriously, even if I played, I was exhausted. So I ended up playing a lot of reserve grade. We ended up winning the comp in reserve grade. Graham Murray coached us.
Oh, really? Wow.
At Penrith in 87.
Yeah.
And he was great to me, Graham. He was like, as much as I was dirty on Sheensy, I loved Muzz.
Yeah.
And I played okay in reserve grade, but I didn't play great.
Yeah, okay.
But we ended up winning the comp. We beat Manly, I think, 11-2 or 11-0 in the grand final in 1987, and that was my last game.
Wow. Did you know it was going to be your last game?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you knew
I'd
you were
had
going
enough.
to.
I'd
Yeah,
had
okay.
enough by then. I think I wore onto the field like I'd broken my arm, dislocated my shoulders, broken jaw. I had a headgear on. I copped a couple of knocks that year.
Yep.
I wore a headgear, had an arm guard, had shin pads, shoulder pads. Mate, I had every bit of protection you possibly could. I think I nearly threw a box down below just to cover, just in case there was drama down there as well. But, mate, I had that many things on. And in 1987, the grand final was played at the SCG. It was seriously about 42 degrees.
Oh,
it was a stinking hot day.
Wow.
And it was a day in first grade where Manly beat Canberra. But, mate, it was so hot. We played at about 12:30. And I had all that stuff on.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Mate, I think I played the whole game. I think I did, but I didn't. It was hardly one of my great performances. Let me put it this way, Denon. I don't have a copy of the game.
Okay, you don't watch every
single.
Okay.
The game.
Yep.
So we had Tony Butterfield, MG.
Wow.
Yeah, we had some good players in reserve grade. Brad Fittler played.
Oh, really?
I think Craig was the captain. His brother, not Brad Fittler. Sorry, Brad Izzard. I keep saying Brad Fittler. Brad Izzard played, and Grant was one of his brothers.
Yep.
And mate, we won. We played pretty good. We didn't have to win.
Yeah.
But we're a decent side.
What about the year before that when you do go back and you've got a guy like... Because I think everyone sees Greg Alexander as a pundit now. They don't actually realise how good he was. unbelievably
he was a
good.
Gun.
What was it like playing with Greg Alexander?
Mate, I'd never played with anyone quite like him.
Yeah.
Like I had good years with the Bulldogs with some good, really, really good players, great players.
Yep.
But Greg was so instinctive and fast, and he could do anything on the football field.
Yeah.
And he retrieved. If he got into the clear, it was shut the gate.
Yeah. Okay.
He was so fast, and even if still had a fullback in front of him, you knew he'd either chip over the top, regather, run around him. Mate, he was just fast, and he was a great player, and he's a great bloke.
Yeah.
I love Brandy. I don't see a lot of him. He lives on the northern beaches.
Yep.
These sort of polar
castle
opposites to where I am. Yeah, well, I would imagine he's done all right for himself. I love him on TV. I think he's great on television.
Yeah.
And he's still doing it. So, well, mate, I don't know how old Brandy would be now. I'm nearly 69. He'd be nearly 60.
Yeah, wow.
He's got to be late 50s.
Yeah.
He's 60, is he?
Right.
Okay. So, I was going to say he'd be nearly 60, but he still looks good. He looks fit. His commentary's tremendous. And I enjoyed my time with him, like John Cartwright. I love John Cartwright.
Yeah.
I played footy with him. He was just a legend. He's coaching over in England now.
Yeah.
MG. I played with MG. Mate, I played Royce Simmons. What can you say?
What can you say about
it? He's one of the greatest blokes I've ever met.
Yeah, wow.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
What a good crop to come. Like, I know you didn't stay there for long, but it's a good crop to have at least experienced some time.
Mate, these were younger blokes than me. Well, Royce was there when I was there with a bloke called Brad Waugh, who I'm, very close to. And I try and be as close as I can to the Penrith boys, even though I don't live anywhere near there anymore.
Yeah.
But we catch up probably twice a year.
Yeah.
Where I see Royce, Brad Waugh, a few. I saw Mark Levy, not the radio Mark Levy. There's another Mark Levy.
Okay.
I saw him about a year ago out at Penrith. It was good catch up with these blokes. He played fullback, had 99 first grade games for Penrith, and I think Sheensy dropped him.
Yeah, wow.
His last game to get the 100.
No.
So that's a bit hurtful, isn't it?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, but that's life.
Are you a Penrith or are you a doggy? Panther or a doggy, sorry.
Mate, I enjoy them both.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're both having a bit of success. Penrith have obviously had a lot of success in the last 5-6 years, and the Dogs who have been down and out have fought back, and they're going great. I'm a great mate of Gus's. Gus is one of those blokes, Denon, I don't know if you know Gus. He's a bit polarising, as we all know, but he helped me in so many ways. So many ways, financially, physically, I suppose, mentally. I'd split up from my wife and I was going through a rough patch, and I lived with him for 12 months. That I didn't pay any rent.
Yeah,
no
wow.
board. He never asked for any.
Wow.
He used to supply most of the stuff. I was working.
Yeah.
But, he was, I think, coaching first grade at the time. He was on a fair bit better wage than what I.
Yeah, just helping you get back on your feet as well.
Still is on a fair bit better wage than me. But he's a very generous bloke, and he helped me big time.
Yeah, okay, wow.
Big time in a tough part of my life.
Yeah. It's it's one thing to say, give us a call if you need a hand, and a lot of people say that, but actually...
Well, Gus was there in those days when I first went to Penrith. He was actually Penrith captain.
Wow.
He was the youngest captain they've ever had. I think in 78, I went there in 79, and he was captain of the first grade side.
Wow.
And then he sort of had, I think, a bit of a see eye to eye with the coach in 79 and played a bit of reserve grade. So, and I actually was with him at the Bulldogs. We both ended up at the Bulldogs together as players.
Yep.
And I after I got the ask coaching the Broncos, he gave me a job reserve grade at the Bulldogs, and that's where I stayed with him for a year.
Yeah,
when I came to Sydney.
Yeah, okay.
I came back to Sydney from Brisbane. So
wow. As I said, it's one thing to say, give us a call if you need a hand. It's another thing to actually
do it.
Yeah.
Well, mate, he did it.
Yeah.
Mate, what happened was I went back to Brisbane. I retired in 87, decided to go back to Brisbane. Out of the blue, Wayne Bennett asked me if I wanted to coach reserve grade Broncos. And I'd never had any coaching experience.
Yeah.
In saying that, I thought I'd be good at it.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't. So Bennett gave me the ass at the end of the 88 season.
Yeah.
And I actually always say this at functions. I say, I think he gave me the ass because he realised I was a threat. He doesn't like having blokes around him.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Well, that's probably a lie. I'm probably the only one who actually thinks that. But then Gus sort of once again came to my rescue and said, look, I know you've been given the flick. I was living in Brisbane.
Yep.
And I just split up from my first wife, and I was going through a tough time. And he said, how about you come down and coach the Bulldogs seconds for me? He's coaching the first grade in 80. They'd won the comp in 88, by the way. So I was going from the Broncos to coaching a premiership club the year before.
Yeah, wow.
But I was coaching the Reggies, obviously.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell him I was a bad coach. So I said,
Left that part out.
So, love to. Anyway, he picks me up from the airport, and Bullfrog was still in charge of the Dogs in those days. And he'd supposed to have organised some accommodation for me. So Gus picked me up at the airport. He said, look, your accommodation's fallen through.
Yep.
You can come and stay with me for a couple of weeks while we organise something.
Yeah.
Well, that turned into 12 months. So, well, why would I leave?
Yeah, mate, living the
free
dream.
accommodation, was supplying most of the food. His mother had come over and do the washing.
Oh, no way.
I was living the life.
Literally the dream.
I was living the dream. Living the dream.
Mate, we've got to talk about it, your Footy Show days. Like, did you ever think it could have the impact that it had? Like even, I
always thought I always knew the show was good.
Yeah, for sure.
But I never thought I'd be part of it.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd be in the media. I never, ever thought of being on radio or TV or anything like that. And out of the blue, I was doing the radio, and I wouldn't say I'd cemented my space there, but I'd done a few years of it. Out of the blue, Johnny Gibbs, who I worked with, who's one of Fatty's great mates, just said to me, he said, mate, Fatty wants to know if you want to do something on the Footy Show. So I used to go in there and do a little bit. I think it was in the old days where the kids had scored the tries and run length of the field, and I'd do the commentary on that. So I was only on for 10, 15 minutes, one segment or something like that. And then they got me to just come in occasionally and do some guest hosting and stuff like that, and it just developed from that. We came up with the small talk with the Big Marn, which just took off, really.
Mate,
it was sort of a segment that came from nothing. No one was doing it. And I remember I actually, without wrapping myself, I said to them there, I said, mate, why don't we do a segment like that? I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Because the kids are funny.
Absolutely.
They're honest.
So honest. There's no filter. They don't know the consequences of their words.
Exactly, no filter. So I sort of went from doing little bits and pieces on the show to having my own segment to sort of being on the show.
Yeah.
When they were looking for someone, I don't know, it might have been around the time that Foxtel came into the equation, so they were looking for someone. Anyway, I got the gig.
Yeah, wow.
So I was there with Fatty. Sterlo, I think, had left by the time I got on there. And then, mate, I was probably on it for 10, 12 years.
Mate, what a time.
And it was great. I loved every minute of it. It wasn't taxing. I used to record the small talk stuff, I think, on a Monday afternoon. And then, you might have to do something during the week. You might do an anti-ad or something, a bit of that. And then just get there and do your best.
Yeah.
We'd go through it all, what they wanted on the show. And, mate, Fatty would... Mate, he's the greatest, in my opinion. He's the greatest, I think, sporting talent to move from there to television that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He was so natural.
Yep.
And he did it his way.
Yeah.
And he'd just do stuff off the cuff that was just funny.
Mate.
Mate, you're probably the same. I just got to look at him to laugh. It's funny.
He's just a funny guy. You can say the same, two people can say the same thing, but Fatty just says there's these little inflections, there's little parts of the way he says
the
it.
head wobble.
Yeah.
Mate, the things when he stuffed up, like that we ended up doing auto cues like towards the end of the Footy Show, probably the last 5 years. Fatty hated it.
Yeah.
But they'd throw an auto cue up and he just would disregard it, and they'd chip him in the break. So what are you doing, you idiot?
That's the magic.
But that was him, mate. That made the show.
Yeah.
Like the times he'd look at the wrong camera, and then he'd look back and say, what? It's just funny.
Mate, absolutely. And that's the audience loves that
and he's still funny,
realness.
mate. He's retired now.
Yeah, the big fella.
He's retired. He's up Queensland and he's living the dream up there. I imagine he'd be playing golf most days, punting most days. Living the dream.
Mate, I just to put in perspective, because some of the younger audience listen to this, that to put in perspective how good the Footy Show was. Now, we've got some current shows, that do good numbers for sports shows. So like, you might have your Matty Johns show, who's probably the biggest, not probably, it's the biggest, Matty Johns. And Matty Johns is one of the greatest all time, if not the greatest all time, in my opinion. The Footy Show was doing numbers compared to mainstream shows. So like that, they were beating out other mainstream television. Now imagine today if there was a show beating, I don't know, maths or something like that for numbers or whatever. That's what the Footy Show was doing.
Yeah, I think it was doing. It was a good show.
Crazy.
I loved watching it when I wasn't on. I'd watch it, but I particularly liked it when I was on. But I think when it started to maybe slide a little bit was the introduction of Thursday night football.
Okay.
So it was coming on air at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then probably wasn't off air till about 10.
Yeah.
Now in the old days,
Super
I
late.
think the Footy Show was starting at 9:30, I think, from memory. But and people say it was only half an hour. But mate, if you're tired, and you watching the footy comes on, and sometimes you've had enough footy by the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that was the beginning of the end of the Footy Show.
Okay.
But mate, it was still very watchable and funny. We had like Aaron was on it, Aaron Mullen was on it, Bo was on it. There was other blokes, but there was the four that I remember mainly on there was, Mario was on it. There was me, Fatty, Aaron, and Bo towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end. Yeah.
And there was others all the way through. Sterlo pulled the pin a number of years before that. But him and Fatty together were just dynamite. And it came out of nothing. Whether it was Kerry Packer's idea or not, I don't know. But they just threw them together one night, and the Footy Show started.
Mate, amazing.
It was on for I don't know how many years. Must have been 20 years.
Oh, mate, amazing.
25 years. I don't know. And the Fat ran the show all the time.
Yeah. I think that if I could just get my opinion on like why it kind of just slowly went away, I think it lost that knockabout bloke feel. And I think that like that's probably because of the way culture had changed outside of rugby league, put a lot of pressure on that.
Well, mate, I think from our perspective, I mean, you had the cutting edge stuff, that sort of stuff.
Definitely fringe
that
humor,
went,
yeah.
That went. I mean, they tried to become politically correct, whereas we were competing in those days against Matty Johns, and in our opinion, they weren't complying to the
same kind of standards.
Because
they would pay.
Our show was different.
Yeah.
But it was also different from the way the Footy Show used to be because there were things you couldn't do that you could do previously.
Yeah.
And I think, not that I watched the other show, but I think they were probably, pushing the
boundaries a bit
further than what we were, what we were allowed to.
Yeah.
And I think that probably, in the end may have hurt. I mean, whether you want to see a squeaky clean show about football or not, mate, sometimes it's just boring talking about football. I know from my radio time with the continuous call team, we're on, let's say we're on 6 hours. We call a game, so there's 2 hours gone. But the other 4 hours we don't talk about football.
Yeah, just talking
about
blokes
crap.
talking about,
And we rate number one. People love that. For some reason, they love it.
Yeah.
And, mate, I'm good at that shit because I just make stuff up as I go along.
Mate, I want to ask you anti-ad. What's your favourite anti-ad? It's honestly,
I think the
so
funniest
good.
one was the yogurt, wasn't it? I mean, when they were dressed up.
Oh, mate.
Sterlo and him were dressed up. Well, was it? I forget what it was called.
Play or something like that.
It was,
yeah, play.
And they, mate, that was done before I was on there. I would have loved to have seen that, put together. That would have been funny.
Oh, my God.
And I think that's close. Mate, they did a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
And the anti-ads were funny. But they did. I think that's the one that stands out to me is that one.
Yeah, mate, same. Loved it.
It was funny.
Yeah.
Sterlo was dressed up as a girl, wasn't he? You have a
little girl, maybe a little Swiss girl or something like that.
I think so. And Fatty was dressed up. It was just funny. Mate, we did the Highway of Happiness. I don't know if you recall that, where we drove in a camper van from Brisbane to Sydney, me and Fatty in the one van.
No way.
Took
I don't remember
days.
that. No, I don't remember that.
I don't know why we did that, but we did do it. Mate, the story's there. It was funny, some of the stuff. We did the Dark Room Challenge. I don't know if you recall that, where they put us in rooms where it was just completely dark.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to get these stars out of fish bowls or fish tanks that had spiders, snakes, little crocodiles.
The green light so we can see what's going on, but you can't.
Well, yeah, we couldn't see. Mate, it was scary. It was scary.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
What came out of it was funny. But we did Daredevil Dudes, all that stuff,
Yeah.
like skiing and, jumping off.
So good.
Things at the aqua centre or aquatic centre.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've ever jumped off a 10-metre high platform
It's
into
high.
the water.
It's high.
Mate, people say 10 metres, please. Nothing.
Mate, get up there.
Mate, it's scary. It's scary.
Absolutely.
So we did all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And, but you'd do anything those days, whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
It was great.
Mate.
I loved my time there.
And your favourite small talk? Do you have anyone that you remember where you're like, that was great? That was just
Mate, I did
fun
one
stuff.
around the Bulldogs area, and I can't remember the club, where I was interviewing the kids, and there was one particular young bloke who was, didn't say a lot, but he got very tired as the day went on. He actually fell asleep. You could see him nodding off like he was sitting there going. And I remember saying to the cameraman, mate, make sure you get this.
Yeah.
And he did. And this kid was
He'd had enough. He was
I said,
done.
mate, I know I can bore people to death, but I've been, can someone wake old mate up here? And mate, there was a million of them. There were,
Yeah, so good,
when
man.
they did the brain strain at the end, there was one bloke who had to go, one big kid who had to go to the toilet, and him and his mates started fighting when they got back, and it was just funny.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Such a good idea. Such a good concept.
Yeah, it was. It was, mate. It was
Yeah.
great. I loved doing it. I love the kids.
Yeah.
My interaction with the kids, was always good because I love kids. And I've got I can stand a bit of criticism and crap that goes on and the time it takes to do stuff with kids there, because it's hard to get them to all sit down and be quiet at once. But we managed to do it, and whatever we might have spent 3 hours doing it, and put it into about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Of TV time, but it was usually
It was good.
I reckon it was one level. There was levels, different levels. It was either outstanding or pretty good.
Yeah, mate. 100%.
There
And
was
also
never
timeless
a
too.
crappy one.
Yeah.
Never.
And timeless too. Like you can watch that at any time, like in 10 years' time, and it's
mate,
still
I've got
funny and
I've
cute.
got a lot of them
yeah.
at home, believe it or not. And I'll just sit there sometimes and just have a look.
Mate.
And sometimes I crack myself
Yeah.
up. Not the kids, just me.
Mate, it's also been a huge part of the Lowe's menswear advertising. Obviously in good company there as well.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Mate, it happened when I was working at, I think, 2UE with Ray Hadley. He was doing Lowe's stuff then, and I think Ciro was there, and Blocker was there. There was a number of them who were there. Terry Hill. And out of the blue, I think Hadley might have got me a start. I bag Hadley quite a lot, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
But he's done some good things for me. Like he got me on radio at 2UE, I think, in the early days.
Yep.
And then that flowed on to doing some Lowe's stuff. Now that was, I reckon I've been doing Lowe's for 25 years.
That's so good.
It's a long time ago.
Mate.
Mate, I don't have a contract with them. I just do it.
Agree.
Pay for whatever.
Yep.
Whatever, whenever they want me to do.
That's a bloody good company.
And I think it's fair to say I'm probably not doing as much now as I once did. You know, because time changes, mate.
Yeah,
You've got
absolutely.
to get, you got to move on. And now they've got actual people who look good. I mean, it's just bullshit.
Lowe's is all about
they've got
just
people
blokes.
like models who actually are good looking. So, but I think they started the big men's section, not for me, but because I was there, they thought, well, maybe there are big blokes. Anyway, I think
way ahead of their
sort
time.
of happened. Well, mate, and it's been very successful
Absolutely.
for them. And I, Mrs. Penn's the owner, she's been so loyal to me, and the whole company have been good to me. I still probably do radio stuff for them, radio ads for them. Me and Ciro still do that, probably once every 2 weeks, and then I'll probably do a shoot of something every 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
Whether it's a catalogue or a TV ad or something like that. They've been so good to me, and they're a great Australian company.
Absolutely.
They've got, I think, over 100 stores throughout Australia. That's a lot, mate. That's a big company.
Oath. Absolutely.
That's a big company.
And for them to be as loyal as they've been, like most companies aren't, like it's just not like that.
Well, she's been great to me. I remember we were calling State of Origin last year in Melbourne, and Hadley used to come in and call the State of Origins. Like he wouldn't do the other stuff, but he'd come and just take over, call grand finals and State of Origins. It's just ridiculous.
All about him.
Oh,
all about
pretty
him.
much so. But I remember we were sitting there in the preamble, we were talking about Lowe's. There must have been Lowe's ads on or something. And he said, yeah, I go to Lowe's all the time. Still, I've got my platinum card. I said, you go, what? He said, I've got my platinum card. This is Hadley. And I said, I don't have a platinum card. He said, yeah, I just go in there and just tick it up. Don't pay for anything.
Mate, the rich get richer.
I said, bullshit. I said, yeah, I do. So I think off air, I texted Mrs. Penn, Linda. I said, look, Linda, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill here. But has he seriously got a plan? Anyway, as it turned out, he did have one. Oh. And she was in Italy or somewhere. But she got back to me. She said, I'll arrange one for you when I get home.
Oh, that's good. That's very nice. That's nice.
She said, don't you dare use it too often. So, mate, I very rarely use it. I don't need to, mate. I mean, if I go in there and do a shoot or something, they'll say, you want to take some of this stuff home? T-shirts. I've got a million T-shirts. Yeah. Reg Grundys, I've got a lot of those Reg Grundys.
And you're right in regards to the Australian company thing. Like, they were ahead of their time. Like, a lot of clothing companies didn't do bigger sizes. You know, like, there's a lot of companies that now they advertise how, like, they're so good because they do it. They've been doing it for friggin' 25 years or something.
And the stuff's, you know, the quality's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not creme de la creme stuff, but it's pretty good.
It's not supposed to be.
You can get a suit there for $99.
Mate, living the dream, I mean,
a lot of people don't need suits, but sometimes if you're going to a wedding or to the races or whatever, you just need a suit. You just duck into Lowe's. Sometimes you can get them for $99, maybe $199. Yeah. Mate, they're as good as gold. I've probably got about 5 at home. Yeah. You know, and they're magnificent.
Bloody good Australian company. Yeah, bloody good Australian company.
She's a great woman.
Mate, in regards to, you know, you said you'll probably finish up as in wherever you do finish up with 2GB. I guess what is the plan for you after that? Is it just enjoy retirement?
Probably. I'd like to do a bit of travelling.
Yeah.
You know, we've done all right for ourselves, me and my missus. We're not married, but we've been together. I met her at Canterbury Leagues, by the way.
Oh, really?
1989, yeah. It's
no way.
Yep. I was there with Gus. Went up and said, hi, I'm Darryl Brohman. You've probably read about me. How big are your Bristols? It's exactly what I said.
Oh.
But then a week she was all over me like calamine lotion anyway. But that was 1989.
How could she resist your charm, mate?
Well, I thought it was a pretty good line. Anyway, we've been together since 89.
Wow.
So we've got 2 girls.
90, so you're looking at what?
That's 11. That's 36 years.
36 years, mate.
We're not married. I did ask her once, and she said no.
She's still
I said, okay, I'm not asking you again. So, but we're still together, and no, we're good. So, mate, I don't know.
That's kind of a good thing, I guess.
Believe it or not, I've got a self-managed super fund. I'm actually drawing something out of it now because I'm old enough.
Oh, really?
I didn't know I could. Okay. I've got. I don't know if you wouldn't remember this bloke by the name of Colin Ward, played for Penrith, St George.
Yep.
Well, he's my financial advisor.
Okay.
I don't know if he's doing a good job or not, but he did tell me that, you know, you're at an age now where you can actually draw some out of your super.
Yep.
So me and Darling draw something out each month, so it's good.
That's nice. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Really do appreciate it. And, so every weekend they can still get you, 2GB? Continuous call?
Yep,
number 1?
Well, it has been for a long time.
That's incredible.
I mean, when Hadley left, I think they all thought, they might, drop off here. So, but we've still managed to maintain the lead.
Yep.
There's a Triple M main opponents, obviously.
Yep.
And they've got some quality blokes working for them, but so have we.
That's awesome.
And ladies, Alana works there.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah.
So we, a lot of Channel 9, obviously Channel 9 owns it now, 2GB.
Yeah.
So, but mate, I've got another year after this year to go, and hopefully I might even stay a bit longer if they want me.
Mate, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Great.
Mate, thank you so much, Colin. Really do appreciate it. And,
Thanks, Dan.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for the big fella.
Well, mate, you're doing okay for yourself. You look like you own a nice place here, so you're doing all right.
Hey, we lease here, mate. We lease here. We're just battlers, mate, doing our best.
You'll be buying it soon, I reckon.
Oh, thanks, mate. Appreciate
See you,
it.
mate.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.